Thanks a lot, and thanks a lot, Greg. A lot of the things you kind of mentioned, I'd like to key on as well. So we've been around for quite a while. We started in 2011. This is a picture of one of the first, I think, publicly available demonstrations of AR in the enterprise. This was Mine Expo 2012 in Las Vegas. And this is Scope AR's co-founder, David Nedawin, wearing a customized pair of glasses. It's actually the Epson Moverios with a hacked-on webcam on top of it. We ran it through a laptop and kind of a full Frankenstein solution. But the response from this conference was so amazing that we decided to build a company upon this. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the hype cycle and what it is. I'm sure a lot of people here are familiar, but just so we're all on the same page. Basically, when a technology comes out, invariably it gets hyped. People can imagine great things being done with it. The media hypes it up. And also invariably, the hype never lives up to, or the expectations never live up to the technology at first. And so you hit the peak of inflated expectations. And then gradually, we hit the trough of disillusionment where people give up on it and say, this is never going to work. It's never going to mature to the point where it's useful. And then finally, the technology does start to catch up, and you enter the slope of enlightenment to the point where it becomes an everyday thing. So a great example of this is the internet. Back in the late 90s, massive hype. Tons of companies valued it at billions of dollars. Tons of money goes into it. And then the dot-com crash happens. And that's when investors say, OK, you guys are not making money. The technology's not ready. And then finally, mid-2000s, we start seeing Facebook, Google, Airbnb, all the great tools that we can't live without today. So great example of that kind of flowing. So back in 2011, where were we on the augmented reality hype cycle? Well, we were right at the peak of inflated expectations. So we had a bunch of kind of toolkits out there. Euphoria, Wicked 2, Total Immersion, Mataio, a couple of glasses. ODG has a rudimentary pair of glasses. The Epson Moverio BT100s that I mentioned didn't even have a camera on them, so you kind of a heads-up display, but you couldn't really do augmented reality. Nothing really happened in 2012, but 2013 was kind of a breakthrough year. Google Glass came out, brought the augmented reality into the public consciousness. DAQRI raises $15 million, which at the time was kind of a big round. They start to work on their glasses. And then Vuzix comes out with the M100s, one of the first kind of enterprise-focused wearable. 2014, we're coming down to the like halfway down the trough. Epson launches the second pair of glasses, the BT200s, now with a camera. Now you can do some augmented reality experiences. Magic Leap raises a giant round from Google and Qualcomm. And then Intel releases RealSense. So this is kind of the first consumer viable depth sensor. And they're showing off some really, really cool augmented reality experiences. So 2015, we're coming into the trough here a little bit. We start seeing software. We launched Remote AR, the world's first AR-enabled remote assistance application. Mataio gets acquired by Apple. Google releases Tango, so now you've got that depth camera inside an actual mobile device, and we're starting to see some really cool AR experiences. PTC acquires Vuforia out of Qualcomm, so showing a lot of interest in the industrial space. ODG launches their next pair of glasses, the R7s. Intel buys Recon, a big chip manufacturer buying kind of a smaller company, showing real viability in the wearable market. All right, 2016, we launch our WorkLink product. So this is one of the first AR industrial workflow applications. And there's a lot of hardware launches. ODG launches another pair of glasses. DAQRI launches the Smart Helmet, and Microsoft notably launches the HoloLens. This brings true augmented reality, or Microsoft parlance is mixed reality, just delivering really great new hardware. Lots of fundraising starts to happen. ODG, Loomis, Meta all raise big rounds in the $50 million range. 2017, all right, we're clearly in the trough of disillusionment. An AR Core and AR Kit start coming out. Google and Apple really getting into the game, showing that they're putting billions of dollars behind this. Snapchat, we're seeing some really cool things with faces, and Facebook gets into the game with Facebook Spaces. All right, here we are in 2018. Why are we still in the trough? Why hasn't this not moved? Well, I'd like to split this into consumer versus enterprise augmented reality. There's big buy-in from Apple, Google, Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft, but we're still in the trough. But let me ask you a question. Who in the audience here actually has an AR app that they use on an everyday basis? Besides the Scope AR team. All right, so nobody. So What's that?
Backup camera on your car.
Sure. Actually, that's not a bad idea. Okay, all right, she's got me. It's a backup camera on your car. So disillusionment happens when expectations do not meet reality. So we've got all this hype, AirKit, AirCores out there, but all the apps you're seeing in the App Store are, really rudimentary. You've got measuring tapes, you've got things that can, drop holograms in your space, but then they disappear immediately. So not a lot of really great user experiences out there. So, all this hype that Apple's shown about, these great experiences just hasn't met reality yet. But enterprise, we're actually starting to see some interesting applications. We're starting to see some ROI showing. So again, some of the limitations, and Greg talked a little bit about this, and I'm going to disagree a little bit. There are hardware hurdles. The user experience is severely lacking. All these devices, sorry, I don't have any coping devices up here, Greg. You're not going to wear them for more than half an hour or an hour. I can't wear a HoloLens for longer than 30 minutes. The customers that we're seeing having success with HoloLens are actually wearing it for 15-minute intervals. The problem is that most people have phones, iPhones, Samsung Galaxies, Google Pixels. These are extremely refined devices. They've had a decade of user experience refinement. These devices have not, and there's technological limitations that have just not matured enough that we're going to people are going to accept these for a long period of time. So how do you overcome the hype cycle? People are doing it. We're starting to get there. So we've identified that there are 3 distinct demographics that you need to work with within enterprise to have success in your pilots moving to larger deployments. So these are the business leaders. You've got to address your IT concerns and workplace obstacles. Your workforce is a really, I think, underappreciated demographic you have to work with. So business leaders, they just want to show me the money, right? So I think something the industry is really lacking is established ROI numbers. So for the past year, as Scope, we've really put a lot of effort into getting our customers to do pilots, measure these numbers in excruciating detail, and allow us to present them publicly. So Lockheed Martin a couple days ago presented a really great use case, or a case study where they were showing above 90% improvement in efficiency in building the next Orion spacecraft from NASA. And then they're also using remote assistance, and they're seeing 80% time savings. Unilever, a factory in the UK, did a study. They're seeing 50% reduction in downtime, resulting in a 1,700% ROI. So we're starting to see some real documented numbers. There's a bunch of different use cases. Scope AR's president yesterday did give a presentation about some of these case studies in really good detail. So I would definitely encourage you to watch that video on YouTube along with the Lockheed Martin video. So business leaders are bought in. They realize that augmented reality can have great ROI. The next constituent is IT. So IT has a bunch of concerns. Security is a big one. It's only in the past 2 or 3 years where they've actually allowed smartphones and tablets to be within their facilities. And even then, quite often, they require tape to be put over the camera. They've got a lot of concerns around IP theft, taking pictures of designs and documents. Well, with wearables, you have an always-on camera, so that presents a problem. Augmented reality doesn't really work without a camera, so that presents a major obstacle. In addition, augmented reality, we're using, or we're storing a lot of the most important data that a company has on your mobile devices. You've got CAD models with your industrial designs. You've got your work instructions with your instructions on how to build or use your machinery. This is all some of the most important IP a company owns. So security is a major, major concern. Privacy. So we've got this always-on camera. What are the implications for your IT policies, your workforce policies? Google Glass, obviously, everybody remembers the backlash with having a camera. Nobody knew if they were being recorded. It's the same deal inside a workplace. This is a big, big problem. And then device management. Again, back to storing CAD models and work instructions. That's on a mobile device now that can walk out of the building. And so how do you secure that? Again, massive concern for IT. So the solution to really overcome this is to have IT involved in the conversation early. So prioritize IT. if you expect to kind of hope for the best and start a pilot project with an innovation team inside a company, and then expect to scale once that pilot project shows promise, you're in for a world of hurt. Take it from us. It can take, if IT is really nice, it can take a few months to get approved. If they're not, it can take years. So they have to be involved as early as possible. You have to get buy-in. You have to develop your application, your policies along with company's IT. You should be really transparent with the data collection. So with work instructions, our product, we can collect a lot of different data about a workforce. So as you're going through a procedure, you can collect GPS coordinates, who the guy is, how long it takes a worker to do each step, checklists. Did you turn off the power, take a picture of this gasket you just removed, record you doing this video, this procedure. So you have to make that optional. Not every company, not every worker is going to want you to collect that type of data. And the other thing is, don't be afraid to start with mobile first. These devices, phones, tablets, are already established in enterprise. People know how to use them. We don't really have to go to wearables immediately. We can actually have great experiences on mobile. AirKit and AirCore have allowed us to provide a really great experience, whereas we used to have to rely on something like HoloLens to have amazing tracking, to have a great fully augmented experience. So finally, and I think this is the most underappreciated constituent, and we only started kind of realizing this over the past year, is that there are workforce obstacles. We're undergoing a massive shift in how people work. Augmented reality is going to provide amazing returns, but it's also going to present a lot of different changes in how people work. People don't like change, especially blue-collar workers. They want to keep their jobs. And when we're talking about the ROI numbers that we're seeing, 50%, 60%, even 30% reduction in time savings, blue-collar workers hear that and like, oh, so you're 30% more efficient. Does that mean you're going to reduce the workforce by 30%? Greg actually just mentioned this. He talked about aircraft mechanics. And companies love this. They can do more with fewer mechanics. You don't have to recruit. Well, that's not what workers want to hear. They hear that message like, oh, okay, well, I should probably not make this pilot successful because then my job or my friend's job is in jeopardy. So you really have to work with your workforce to make sure that they're on board. In addition, there's safety concerns. Now they're wearing these wearable displays while they work, or maybe they're on the phones. But wearable displays have the opportunity to obstruct your view. Are they safety glass certified? If there's an explosion, are these things going to catch fire on my face and disfigure me? There's a lot of legitimate concerns with this new technology that you've got to take into account. And then there's privacy implications, again, like IT. But coming down to the worker, do they want their work recorded? I know a lot of blue-collar workers that would love to slack off as soon as the boss, went around the corner or left the premises. So do they want their productivity recorded? The unions have a big issue with this. Who collects the data? How does that data being used for their against their workforce or for their workforce? It's a bit of a liability. So if you don't address all of these things, you're not going to be successful in your pilots and deploying to large companies. So what you really have to make sure that you take into account is use case alignment. Choose your use cases wisely. I'll talk a little bit more about this in a bit, but AR doesn't fit every situation. Change management is incredibly important. So having somebody to work with the organization to work with all three constituents in order to facilitate change is really important. They can buy 3 of the coping glasses or 3 HoloLenses or whatever it is, but like Greg said, that's not a deployment. In order to get 1,000 or 10,000 devices out to the workforce, you have to work with the entire organization, top to bottom, to change how things are done. Transparency is really important as well. Like I said, there's lots of fear, and so the more transparent you are about what's being collected, the less fear there is. And education, talking to workers about, hey, you are going to be doing your job more efficiently, more safely. This is not going to result in a workforce reduction next year. If we can do more with less, be more efficient at our jobs, that means the company makes more money, which means we can grow. We can do more things. That's what progress is all about. It's not about reducing the workforce. So use cases. I think there's a tendency for companies to try to use AR as a hammer. They say, oh my God, we can do so many cool things with this. Let's just try out all of them. But you've got to be really careful about the use cases you choose. We've had some really great successes with certain use cases, and we've had some failures. So the key industries that we're really targeting are manufacturing and field service. So manufacturing instructions is a really great way of communicating from the engineers that are writing instructions on how to build something and communicating those instructions down to the technicians that are building it. Field service, we talked a lot about remote assistance. Straight video isn't a great way to work with workers. Yes, you can see what the guy's seeing, but you're still telling him how to fix a problem. With augmented reality layered on top, now you can collaborate in real time. You can circle a wire harness and draw over it, load 3D models on top of it, and collaborate, move things around. So it's a much more immersive experience to collaborate from afar over remote assistance. There's a lot of other industries that are really interesting. Medical, logistics, for example, construction. So in general, great use cases have a couple characteristics that we look for. Either low volume, high complexity. Something where the task is done infrequently, so you don't have time for workers to memorize the instructions. And high complexity, so it's not a simple procedure where they can just figure it out themselves. Or there's high volume, small improvements. So this would be like a field service use case. You're saving 10% or 20% or 30%, but you're doing it a lot. So the investment in AR and devices pays off in a big way. Where we have seen failures is mostly in highly automated use cases where people start memorizing instructions. At that point, AR instructions just become a nuisance. You have this wearable that you don't want to wear. It's not great. Where there's low-skilled labor available and plentiful, or low-cost labor, AR just isn't worth the investment. In highly repetitive tasks, again, people memorize the instructions and you don't really get a payoff. So key takeaways, AR is showing ROI. We're seeing some dramatic numbers. You can really save a lot of money in a whole lot of metrics, from time savings, downtime, improved efficiency, safety. Current AR implementations, though, are purpose-built. And I don't mean that you have to customize your solution. I mean you have to choose your use cases wisely. It's not going to be a one-size-fits-all solution. And you have to have your workforce bought in from the beginning. If you don't involve the workforce, your pilots are going to fail. And so yeah, if we accomplish all this, then I am firmly convinced that we can move enterprise augmented reality into the plateau of productivity. So thanks very much.